At this time, I again would like to welcome all. Today we will examine the budget requests for Indian Health Service. I want to thank Mary Smith, the Principal Deputy Director for IHS, for appearing before us today. Ms. Smith was named to the top position at the agency just last week, so we wish you well. The head of the IHS, I think we recognize, is a tough job. It's a critical job for us in Alaska, where all of the health care for Native Alaskans is delivered through compacts between tribal organizations and the IHS. Ms. Smith is accompanied by Elizabeth Fowler, who is the Deputy Director for Management Operations, as well as Gary Hartz, Director of the Office of Environmental Health and Engineering. We welcome all of you. Last year, we started what I hope will be a tradition. We held the first IHS budget hearing in over 5 years. This is too important in terms of your work to have such a lapse. So I'm pleased that we are having this hearing. With a budget of over $5 billion, yet a seemingly limitless number of needs for healthcare delivery for Native Americans, it's critical that this subcommittee exercise strong oversight role to make sure scarce resources are spent as efficiently as possible. The IHS budget request for FY17 is $5.185 billion for programs within this subcommittee's jurisdiction. This is an increase of $377 million, or 8% above last year's enacted. There are worthy increases in this budget, including $82 million for contract support costs. I'm pleased that this budget fully funds these costs and adopts the approach that I put forward in the Senate bill for FY16, which establishes a separate, indefinite appropriation for contract support costs to ensure these legal obligations are met and other programs will not be affected. Other important increases include $132 million to address the more than $2 billion backlog on the current healthcare facilities construction list, as well as $15 million for the substance use, abuse, and suicide prevention program with a particular focus on youth. And I'm particularly interested in the initiatives in your budget to address substance abuse, suicide, and domestic violence. These are enormous problems within Indian country and are particularly acute in Alaska. I think we look at the statistics and just are truly overwhelmed by them. 1 out of every 3 American Indian or Alaska Native women will be sexually assaulted in her lifetime. The alcohol-related death rate for Native Americans is 6 times greater than the rest of the population, and the suicide rate for 15 to 24-year-olds is 2.5 times the rate for other ethnicities. We've had a very courageous group of young people from Tanana, Alaska, who've spoken out about these issues in their community over the past few years. They stood before several thousand Alaska Natives at our largest gathering at the Alaska Federation of Natives Conference. They've written what is known as the Tanana Pledge to encourage Native Alaskans around the state to stand together against suicide, against substance abuse. It was just a few weeks ago there was an article in our newspaper and on the radio about dozens of young people from the village of Queetluck who took a stand against alcohol and drugs in their community. They marched through the streets of the village with homemade signs and basically saying enough is enough. And so when your children stand in front of you and stand in front of the adults and say, stop it, enough is enough, it is well past time to act. In an effort to push for more effective ways to address issues like suicide among Indian youth, I sent a letter last December to Secretary Burwell with 11 other senators, including our ranking member here, concerning the issue of complex trauma. And in that letter, we asked Department of Health and Human Services to develop a coordinated interagency approach that incorporates the growing evidence that complex childhood trauma is often the underlying cause of substance abuse and youth suicide. I see that your budget discusses trauma-informed care and indicates that the agency's mental health and social service program provides training and workforce development to IHS and tribal healthcare providers to incorporate culturally relevant and trauma-informed approaches. When we get to the time for questions, I'd like to learn more about what IHS and the Department of Health and Human Services as a whole are doing in this area. I think it's critical that we continue to make progress